Good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we want to bring in our Facebook groups as well. We're going to bring in Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons, and we're going to bring in Scott Kennedy Sports. Once we get that going, we'll get going on a new Coast to Coast football podcast. Looks like one of them has kicked me out. Let's try that again. Thank you for your patience. And welcome in, everybody. This is the Coast to Coast football podcast. Why is it Coast to Coast? Because I am Scott Kennedy. I am in Atlanta. I will be your host, along with co-host Nick Kendell, who is in Seattle. So we are coast to coast with your football coverage. So it's bright and early in Seattle. We do this live every Friday at 9 a.m. For those of you who are NFL fans, NFL draft fans, this is your show. We also do shows all week long, 9 o'clock or 9:30 on Denver Broncos and Atlanta Falcons. So make sure you're following us on the Twix at Scout Kennedy, at Nick Kendell MHH. Follow wherever you happen to be watching this or subscribe to it so you get that alert. And you can see which of these shows you might want to come into. And, if you've got questions, we answer questions, even if it's about off topic. But welcome in, everybody. Appreciate you being here. And Nick, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Excited. I'm going to go off on one final backpacking adventure this weekend, over somewhere in central Washington. And that'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, excited for football. I mean, I'm still buzzing from the game last night. A lot of fun. And hoping my football teams have a better week this week after a unbelievable. And both my teams are the laughing stocks of both college and NFL right now, with Iowa only getting 4 first downs. And then Denver giving up 70 points. So ready to put that week behind me from my football fandom.
Yeah, you sent me that graphic. So Nick went to Iowa. I went to Auburn, and they're last and second to last in offense this year. It's like it's hard not to think that the world doesn't revolve around you when all this stuff keeps happening. How can you not say I'm not a curse? I've even cursed Chelsea, who was a trophy-winning machine and now can't get a goal for nothing. So, go Blues. But it balances out. My Braves look pretty good right now. So we'll see how that goes. But we do go live every Friday morning. Every morning we do this because we like to bring in you. We like to have your comments and have the interaction with the chat. If you are watching after the fact, leave a comment. Nick and I will come back and answer them. I'm pretty obsessive, especially on the YouTube. Facebook's a little more difficult to filter in and find the comments, but on YouTube, ask anybody, like John Harrell. John Harrell coming in on YouTube. He says, good morning, guys. Happy Friday to you as well. Silas Draven, he says, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. John Harrell has a Falcons question. He says that Troy Anderson might not be done for the season. They said initially it was shoulder pectoral, and then they went to pectoral. If it's a torn pec, he's done. So they said they got to go in and find all of the, the extent of the damage, and they won't really know that until MRI / they go in and try and repair it. So if it's a torn pectoral, he'll be out for the rest of the season. But the IR is just 4 games, so there's still hope. But when I heard pec, I thought the worst, which is probably most of the season, John. Bobby Carter says, good morning, everybody. Let's go Falcons. Good morning to you as well. Keith Robbins coming in on Facebook. Good morning. Winston's joining us. He's joining us on Facebook as well. And a lot of Falcons fans in the show, we do Falcons Broncos every day. So they like to watch us and talk Falcons Broncos and stuff with us. But one degree of separation from the Atlanta Falcons was a team that looked pretty damn good last night. And they've looked good for the most part this season. It's the Detroit Lions.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, these guys are for real. They didn't fluke their way into a victory week 1 against Kansas City. And the Falcons played them tight, but their offense was strangled. Falcons defense is pretty darn good, but they dominated that game in Green Bay like very few Detroit Lions teams have done in the past.
I mean, yeah, what can you say? Ben Johnson will be a head coach somewhere next year, the offensive coordinator for the Lions. Yeah, he's doing a great job. Their offensive line is clicking, and Jared Goff is distributing the football. The defense, I mean, a year ago now, they were one of the worst defenses in football. They turned it around down the stretch last year, but early season they were horrible, and now they're getting after it. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is playing great. I think that they are very happy that Trevon Walker, who I think it's still a little bit early to dunk on completely on that, because he's always going to be an athletic project. But he's playing really good football right now, changing the dynamic there. Their defensive line, I mean, Lee McNeil is stepping up. it's a good team overall, and they have not as good a shot as anybody, but after the Eagles and the 49ers, it really could be the Lions as the next best team in the NFC. I mean, the wins they've had have been quality.
And I would argue right now, at this moment, if they were to suit them up and play, the Lions are probably playing better football than the Eagles right now. The Eagles have been a little helter-skelter a little bit. Again, I wouldn't put the Lions ahead of them just because it's a long season and we know, but they're playing better than the Eagles right now. They're playing about as well as anybody in the NFL. They're for real. They're legit. And the thing that I might not have expected, Nick, is the playmaking ability on the exterior with some of those guys. We know Amon-Ra St. Brown was a good player, but here comes Josh Reynolds making diving catches. Here comes Laporta making, basketball rebounds 12 feet in the air in traffic. So they're getting play not from just their offensive backfield where they've invested a lot, but they've gotten, I don't want to say lucky because it takes some good stats, but you look at their rosters, you're like, okay, what, third round pick, fourth round pick, whatever. There's no premium picks like the Lions used to do, drafting a wide receiver every first round in the back in the day. But those guys are making plays. They're not just, okay, we're scheming him open, he's catching. I mean, they are making legitimate. I did not expect him to make that catch plays downfield, and it's really, they're going to be a really tough team to beat.
I mean, yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been awesome for them. 4th-round pick out of USC. Can do a little bit of everything for that unit. They're just a well-balanced team. And, shout out to Sam Laporta. I think setting records as far as early career receiving yards for a tight end. So University of Iowa product there. Probably the only good thing from that Iowa offense over the last couple seasons. But they're playing great. I guess for me, the thing I'm most impressed about is just how much the defense has turned around because they were horrible last year, Scott, early on. We saw it with them, and they've been investing in it, but they've really turned around on that side of the ball. They've been getting after it, and they look like a real contender out there. So super impressed with them, and I don't know if we're not to be fooled by him by any means, but Jared Goff is a pretty darn competent quarterback out there, and I don't think he's not Matt Stafford in terms of the ability and the tools and everything. But you put him out there and he can conduct an offense pretty well if the pieces are around him. And it seems like the Lions have the pieces around them. And this is an offense that's without one of their most dynamic playmakers as well with Jamison Williams. We'll see what happens when he comes back. But he is a big play threat without a doubt. So really good team. David Montgomery's comeback performance with the hat trick touchdowns, still working in Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm really fascinated to see where this Lions teams go. I know we weren't alone on this offseason, Scott, but you and I kept talking. This Lions team, NFC North, I'm taking the Lions. So a lot of fun, good team, fun to see that for them. Also, shout out to the Lions fans. I don't know if you saw them painting the stadium last night, but there was a lot of Honolulu blue in the stands out there in Green Bay. So they've had a long, painful road, but they look like they're about to set up for a pretty good run here.
Yeah, I posted a video on, if you're watching this on my Facebook page, Scott Kennedy Sports, there's a new video on Dan Campbell talking about the win and the historic value of winning in Lambeau, in Arrowhead. And I put a comment underneath. I'm like, anybody other than a direct rival, an NFC North team, if you're not the Packers, if you're not the Vikings, if you're not the Bears, is anybody really rooting against the Lions? Do you turn on the Lions and say, oh man, I hate those guys? It's like, no, they've never, if you're a fan of another team, the Lions probably have not caused you any pain in your life. I think Barry Sanders and the Lions beat the Falcons in a playoff game way back when. Okay, big deal. That one doesn't even register on the pain that Atlanta Falcons fans have endured. You want to see these guys, and you root for a blue-collar guy like Dan Campbell who's out there in old school. So I'm happy for the Detroit Lions. I'm happy for their fans. I enjoy watching them play right now. And I was very happy to see Brian Branch back on the field. I thought he blew an Achilles.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd have put him back on the field in that game. We can talk about that too, but it does seem like he is going to be okay. And also did want to shout out, I think there's been some discussion for the Broncos in general and, what does a rebuild and a teardown look like? Well, the Lions have totally tore it down to the studs, and here we are 3 years later, and they've really done a good job. Now, granted, they have hit on their draft classes. I mean, they really have hit on their draft classes. I mean, 2021 was that start of that turnaround. Penei Sewell, Levi Awuzurike, Aleem McNeil, Melifonwu, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Derek Barnes, all guys who are playing great football right now. Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, Josh Pascal, a guy that, if you remember, I loved a lot. You got Malcolm Rodriguez, who's been playing great football. James Houston's been great for them. And then this last draft, I mean, Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch. We'll see what happens with Hooker, but talk about turning it around. It can be done, and the Lions had a lot of premium assets, and they've done a pretty good job, and they also have not spent a lot of stupid contracts. They've bought guys who are kind of under the radar, mid-tier free agents, and they're not killing them. If anything, they're playing well above their contracts. So shout out to the Lions, man. Good team building.
It goes back to the numbers and building a team. Would you rather have 3 guys worth $6 million on your defense or 1 guy worth 18? Well, it depends on where he is.
Yeah.
But again, you can get a lot better allocating your money rather instead of tying it up to, spreading the wealth, so to speak, amongst a bunch of good, talented players. We saw the Patriots do that for years. Where they'd have, and they also got good enough where people would come in for a discount for 1 year to come in and play. Want to say hello to some folks that have come in. Also, Rusty Moore has come in. So Jake Matthews, they restructured the contract, which was a good idea because he had the highest cap hit in the NFL on the offensive line. And they freed up about $7 million. And Rusty says, what is the thoughts behind freeing up $7 million? Are we thinking Kirk Cousins or Daniel Hunter? I don't see a big move coming like that this year. If nothing else happens, you roll that over and you start shopping for a big ticket free agent edge if they're available for next season. But if you've got the chance to, and while Jake Matthews is still playing at a high level, you can add another year and free up some space. It's when he starts to decline and that big number is on there and you don't want him playing. Right now you want Jake Matthews in the lineup, and he's actually lowering his cap number by extending it. That's a good thing. When you run into trouble is the Matt Ryan situation where you've got $50 million in cap hit and you restructure and you just push it down so that it's 55 the next year. But hey, we freed up 5 this year until it's where it becomes prohibitive. You saw it with Julio Jones. He's got this big number, this big dead cap number. You can't move on from him. So the new deal basically makes sure it ties the Falcons to Jake Matthews through next year, 2024, for sure, with a $22 million cap hit and a 34 and change dead cap. And then you've got a little more flexibility in 2025 with a 22 number against 12, which is fine. I think you're pretty safe thinking Jake Matthews can play at a decent level next year. But I don't know. I'm not really anticipating a big move for the Falcons to start to burn through that cap money right away, Nick.
I will see where they go. All right. I mean, you still have time. It's week 8 for the trade deadline. And this team, I don't think you can trade really for a quarterback that would make sense this season. That would be an off-season move, just given the complication and the song and dance that is the pass game. But a pass rusher, I mean, we've seen pass rushers traded at the deadline the last few seasons. And Danielle Hunter, if he is available, I mean, he is maybe one of the more underrated edge rushers in the NFL over the last 5-6 years. He's been his number. I mean, you look at the numbers, you're like, oh my God, he had that many sacks. So Danielle Hunter would be interesting if the Vikings continue to fall off. I also saw a comment in here from Joe Cannon asking about Chase Young. If I were the Falcons and you're sitting there at, 5-2, close to the deadline, and you could bring in a true number 1 edge, I think I would consider it because you want to maximize that Ritter contract, and maybe Ritter doesn't end up the guy, but you're not just adding, Danielle Hunter and Chase Young for this year. You're adding them for, the core of this team going forward the next 3-4.
And I guess Hunter being a free agent next year would be a sign and trade almost, where you take on but his contract isn't that bad this year. He's only got a $10 million base salary.
I remember his agent got clowned when he signed his contract. Everybody's like, how did this guy sign this? So
yeah, the Falcons could afford that right now. So the $7 million, again, if you push it into next year or you front load it some this year, you re-sign him, you restructure his contract with somebody like that. That might make sense. He turns 29 in a couple of weeks. So he'd play through 30 this year. If say you were to get him this year, 29, he'll be 30, and then 31, 32. You've signed him to a 2-year extension. Maybe. I think that, that's the piece the Falcons are really missing on defense right now. And I won't say really missing. Their defense is pretty darn good. But, that outside edge, Arnold Ebiketie, they used a second-round pick on him. He got like 11 snaps last week. They're basically playing a front four right now. And Bud Dupree's taking up that other defensive end spot. Let's move on a little bit. Let's say a couple more hellos. It says, great morning, Scott and Nick. Good morning to you, Joe. Appreciate you being here. And Lance comes in. He says that Lions CL was credited for forcing 27 pressures against Green Bay. 2 of the top 3 were former Falcon John Kaminsky. Yeah, not Aiden Hutchinson. Charles Harris. Charles Harris. But Aiden Hutchinson, I think, has 8 like that's what he's averaging, per game right now. So that's pretty impressive. Talk about Chase Young. Why has Chase Young underachieved to the extent that he has, Nick? What's the problem with him? What I know the pedigree there. He looks good. He looks like $1 million, but right now to me, he reminds me of Randy Gregory without the baggage, where all this potential, but none of the production.
I don't know. He was kicking the crap out of the Broncos when they played, so he was pretty darn good in that one. I think the ACL really did kind of set him back some. So I can't speak to anything. I haven't heard anything as far as, character with him, but I mean,
that's
maybe
what I mean without the baggage.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they've been shopping him and stuff, you have to at least consider, is there something going on there? But, and that's just, pure speculation on my end. But
the
injury,
they didn't pick up his option, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Nope, they did not.
Yeah.
So it is huge guaranteed money for that option, but he's an edge rusher who's extremely talented. Right. So I don't know. I would have to say it's probably the injuries. I mean, he pretty much lost 2 seasons because of that. And sometimes it's like that. So I'm not sure what's up with that. But yeah, he is I still think he's a talented guy. And if you could add him to the mix here in Atlanta, you should at least consider that, in my opinion, assuming medicals and everything checks off. And that's the other thing with Daniel Hunter. He's had some injuries as well that make him a little bit scary. But man, when he's on the field, he is damn good.
Keith wants to know, what's your evaluation on Jordan Love so far through 4 games, I guess he's played now?
He's made some unbelievable plays, but he has been erratic in the layups. He needs to start hitting the layups much more often. But the arm talent, the ability to create, there are flashes there without a doubt. So wanting to see that from them. Also, I don't think this Packers offensive infrastructure around him is super talented right now. I mean, we both like Christian Watson, but I don't know if he's like a true number 1 kind of guy out there. The offensive line has had a lot of injuries. So that's a team that I think, you Packers fans should be excited about Jordan Love, but you want to see him progress because he definitely needs to start hitting the layups more consistently.
Yeah, I like Christian Watson next to Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
I like him as a really good number 2. I grew up with the 49ers and the Cowboys dynasties. I like him, John Taylor. I like him, Alvin Harper. When we're talking about Christian Watson, not Jerry Rice or Michael Irvin. Those are different dudes. But, if you had to focus on one guy, the other guy was going to kill you. And that's kind of how I feel like Christian Watson. And that's a really good 2nd round pick wide receiver that they got there. I thought they got good value there. Jordan Love, just from seat of the pants analytics, when he drops back to pass, I think he's doing damage. I think he's going to, when he gets time and he gets a clean pocket, I feel like he is going to make the other team pay. So just as untechnical as I can possibly make it, that makes me think he's a dangerous quarterback. He's a good quarterback. When I know there's guys that drop back, I'm like, listen, I'm not worried about this. And towards the end of the Falcons game, they had such a rap on that team that you felt like that a little bit. The Falcons defense was playing so good. But when I see Jordan Love and I see him drop back to pass, I think when he's got time, I feel like he's going to do some damage. And that's about the easiest way I can say I like him.
Yeah, it looks like he's looking to hunt, right? That's something that you want to find from those quarterbacks. But I mean, I've been excited about some of their, complementary pieces there in Green Bay. Jaden Reed has been a good pick for them. Christian Watson has been good, like Tucker Kraft. Oh, Luke Musgrave as well. I mean, they've invested some, but it's that's 3 rookies right there and some of their top players. Romeo Doubs has been great for them too. He might have been a 7th round pick out of Nevada if you remember him.
He's a 2nd-year guy, isn't he?
Yeah, from Nevada. I remember watching him with, oh my God, who is the Nevada quarterback that people love that didn't even get drafted?
Carson Strong.
Carson Strong.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
Romeo was he was a Senior Bowl guy. Both those guys
Yeah.
were at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll see what happens with Love long term. Just needs to be more consistent, and hopefully that'll happen with him being more comfortable. Or maybe not hopefully. I don't know. I feel bad for my Bears friends that I have that are really tired of the Packers.
Chris Walker says, good morning, guys. I've tried to explain to fellow fans that Detroit is a good team and getting better. One loss isn't going to end the season. It's nice to see them finally start their act together after all these years. And again, there's some camaraderie between Detroit Lions and Atlanta Falcons fans. We get it. It's one of the few teams that haven't won a Super Bowl. I know their fans have suffered longer than Falcons fans have. I would agree with that. Maybe their lows haven't been quite as low, but their highs haven't been quite as high either. And they haven't experienced that, the Matt Ryan run was kind of the golden age of Atlanta Falcons with several playoff appearances, a couple NFC championships appearances, et cetera, et cetera. And on that note, I wanted to follow up with what Rusty says, with the Falcons here. He says, obviously I want them to win, but I'm not sure a loss to Jacksonville on Sunday is the end of the world. It just cannot look like it did against Detroit. No, I mean, I had the Falcons going 10-7 this year, and I had them 2-2 after 4. I had them 2-0, 2-1, 2-2. So no, a loss to the Jaguars, unless the Jaguars play like they did last week and you lose to them, because they looked terrible last week. There were all kinds of just undisciplined mistakes, drop balls, offsides, turnovers, special teams. They look bad. If you lose to that team, then you got a problem. But Jacksonville's better than that. I believe that, Nick.
Self-inflicted wounds against Houston. They're a much better team than they showed, and I'd expect them to bounce back in their home away from home. But yeah, 2-2 is not the end of the world for the Falcons because we've talked about it. I mean, we went through the schedule. We're like, what are the toughest games on the schedule? It could be back-to-back Lions and Jags. I mean, it really sets up to be not that tough. And that Lions game looks even tougher in hindsight. Who did they even lose to? I can't even remember who they lost to.
Late, and their fans were pissed. Like they kind of blew that game.
Yep. And I think the players were pissed too. So they look like they've been on a tear the last 2 weeks. So I wouldn't be too upset about that. I mean, what are the expectations of the Falcons this year? You're hoping NFC South contender in playoffs, not Super Bowl contender. You might have gone up against, a true NFC contender in that Lions team. So we'll find out a little bit.
The Lions on the timeline, the Lions are a year ahead of the Falcons.
Yes. Agreed. I mean, just watching that Lions game, you see the difference in the drop back pass game competency, which is probably the biggest takeaway in that one. Back to the Jags. It'll be a fun game without a doubt. I don't think it's the end of the world if you do lose this one, but this is one where the Jags, they're going to watch the tape and they're going to do what they've been doing, which is allocating resources to stop the run and making you beat them through the air. So you need your playmakers to step up and you need Ritter to take a step forward. And can he do that? I guess we're going to find out.
This is where I don't mind put Pitts and London wide, single coverage. They'll play one safety, pick one, whoever single covered, lob it to them 3 times. Just go at them 3 times and see if they can stop you 3 times in a row, single coverage against one of those guys. If they're going to put 9 men to stop the run, which they probably are going to do early. They probably are going to do that early. The big game this week, though, on paper at least, there's some pretty good games. We talk about the Falcons schedule. Well, shoot, the Buccaneers and the Saints are both 2-1 right now too. And the winner, it's going to come out of that 3-1. The NFC South doesn't look all that bad early on right now. Not as the dumpster fire they were talking about. But for me, and for most people, the premier game this week is going to be the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, arguably the 2 of the top 3 contenders in the AFC.
Yeah. I mean, the Bills defense is starting to get it together. I think Jordan Poyer will be out this week, which will be a big blow for that Detroit team. But my God, Miami is on pace to shatter all-time records in offensive performance, offensive metrics. Mike McDaniel's doing incredible things right now with that Miami team. Tua is playing good football, and that was without Jalen Waddle, who just passed concussion protocol, who should be back this week. This is it's going to be an incredible game. I think the Miami, I don't know what the spread is on this one, but just having seen what Miami looks like, I'd probably take Miami even if they're on the road, unless we see Josh Allen go nuclear I think is the phrase that I'd use on that one. And that he can do that.
Usually say God mode for him.
God mode. Yeah, that works too. Yeah, I mean, just unbelievable. I don't know if you, Scott, sometimes I haven't in a while, but referencing Pokemon, but you ever heard of the show Dragon Ball Z?
Nope.
Okay. It's like an anime that was like really, really popular in the 2000s, 90s. But there's a guy named Goku and he goes like Super Saiyan and there's levels of this like Super Saiyan that he goes. And Josh Allen, sometimes he can go the Super Saiyan level and just unbelievable football. Sometimes it creates damage to his own team when he tries to go there. But I think that's the only way that you see this Bills team beat this Dolphins team.
He's old enough to not be playing so cocky. It's very similar to, and I don't know how much you got to watch him in his prime, but it's very similar to Brett Favre. And to a certain extent, John Elway at the time too. These guys are so physically gifted that they think they can do things that they really shouldn't at this level. 102 mile an hour fastball is going to get into that window. I can throw it 105. I'll throw that. Yeah, well, if you miss it by this much or this much on either end, it's going to be, it's a bad throw. So, he's 27 or 28 years old right now, and I cannot be the only one that thinks he looks exactly like Chris Pratt with his helmet on. That had to have been said by someone somewhere. When I see that, like, yeah, Scott, they've been making that comparison for 10 years. I'm like, okay, well, I don't pay attention to what everybody else says. When I see him with his helmet on, I'm like, good Lord. That's the Star-Lord there. That's Guardians of the Galaxy. But he's getting to be too old. I won't say mature because he's still playing immature, Nick. That he's getting to be too experienced to be making some of these, I will say, boneheaded plays. I'm sure I'm not the only one to say that either.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is just baked into his nature. He's got a little bit of, I'm going to try stuff in him, and that's how you get some of that amazing plays, but that's how you get some of the lows too, makes him volatile. And I also do wonder how much of it is just baked into his DNA from his time at Wyoming, where like he had to go out there and do stuff and try stuff if they were going to have any chance in hell because of the talent discrepancy that they had. But you're right. It's this year in the NFL. I feel like with Brian Daboll there, it was starting to be, taken out a tad, but he's reverted to some of those tendencies out there. So early on in the season, I think maybe, that Jets game a little bit too amped. I think he's been better since then. And also I think this team looks a little bit more, they have a little bit more diversity on their offense and what they can do out there. I mean, they went out and invested in the offensive line. Osiris Torrance has looked really good for them, the offensive line. They can go a few different ways with the run game. You got your Latavius Murray sledgehammer, followed by your James Cook, scat kind of back out there. And then Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. So I still believe, Josh Allen will be fine. That Jets game was terrible. That was a very wild week 1 game with everything going on there. But he does need to trust his offense, and I think that'll improve greatly as the season goes along.
It's described to me, the one that I always refer to as the dumbest smart guy I ever scouted was Jay Cutler. I used to try and give him the benefit of the doubt of, okay, he plays like this because he played at Vanderbilt and he was so much better than everybody else that he just got in the habit of trying to force plays. But you know what? After 7-8 years in the NFL, you're just kind of a dumbass. That needs to stop. And he's, like I said, he's experienced enough that needs to come out of his game. You don't want to take the creativity and stuff out of his game completely, but just the reckless plays. The 1 turnover turns into 4 turnovers. That type of stuff where, he overcompensates.
And you don't want to take it away from him either completely, like you're talking about.
Yeah, I just said that. You don't want to take that away. You just need to limit 1 play turning into 3 bad plays.
Yeah. And you also need to know when is the time to do it. You are up in the 3rd quarter against Zach Wilson-led Jets team. Let's put on the training wheels and we're going to low gear on the way home. The only way you lose this game is if you lose it, right? So that's something where it's like, you got to know your situation. You got to know when to push that button. There are times when you're going to have to push the envelope, and you might make a mistake out there. That's football. If you're going to, you don't get big plays without trying to make big plays. But you got to know the situation and the timing, and you got to be more calculated when you go to that mode.
So ESPN Gamecast has a 51% matchup predictor in favor of the Miami Dolphins, but the official line is 2.5 in favor of the Buffalo Bills. Who do you like in this game?
I'm probably going to take the Dolphins just because I think I don't know who has the answers to beating the Dolphins right now, other than maybe the Patriots in terms of a defense, even though the Patriots already lost them. I mean, what did they give up? Only like 24 points or something to them. I don't know if the Bills are going to be good enough up front. I will say you're not going to see them get destroyed on a crack block 3 times in a row to the outside like we saw Randy Gregory do and then get pulled from the game. The Bills they don't have any superstars on that defensive line with Von Miller out, and that's another big factor in this one, Von Miller being out. But they do have like crazy lines out there as far as the depth of their defensive line. I mean, it's almost like, I can't recall who said it, but it stuck with me, hockey waves out there with the Bills defensive line. So they'll get a chance. It's going to be a good game. I'm probably still going to take the Dolphins right now until things get a little bit more mucky out there. It's an arena football league early in the year, right? So a lot of fast-paced games, and I think that favors the Dolphins this week.
Chris, the game is in Buffalo, and Winston says the Dolphins are going to blow the Bills out of the water on Sunday. I'm going with the Bills on this one, and I'm going to use a couple of references. One of my references is, they're both baseball references. You ever see a 16-1 game? The next game, the team gets shut out. Mm-hmm. It could happen. There's balance in this league. The gods of football will balance things out. So I'm going to say, and besides that, the Buffalo Bills are freaking good. They're at home. They're really good. They've got it back on track. They went down to the Commanders and said, okay, enough screwing around. Let's go win this game. Eric says, as good as Buffalo is, I don't see them reaching the Super Bowl with Allen. I could be wrong. I always said that about, again, baseball with Manny Ramirez. When I was watching him play with the Indians, I'm like, this guy is a moron. I'm like, you cannot win games because he's going to cost you games doing something stupid. Now, that's really hard to do in a 9-man baseball team, which is an individual game, unless you're, the pitcher does something stupid or the catcher, someone who's involved in every play. But Josh Allen might be that guy, Eric. He might be. He might be that guy that he can't get it together focused enough, that mentality, in order to take his team to the Super Bowl and win it. It's possible. We'll see. I think he's going to get 7 or 8 chances, over the next 3/4 of a decade to do it. So that should be very interesting. Michael Ranquillo says, good morning, Scott and Nick on Coast to Coast. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here, my friend. And Clarence White, he's pretty fired up. Lions are coming. You better pay attention. You will win at 16-1. Well, let's see that. 16-1 would be a pretty good. Got Panthers at Buccaneers, at Ravens, Raiders, Chargers, Bears, Packers, at Saints, at Bears, Broncos, at Vikings, at Cowboys, Vikings. They may be favored in 14 of those games. Maybe all. There's too many. There's not that many left. There's 13. This 17-game season's killing me. 13 games. They may be favored in 12 out of 13 games. 16-1. I could see a scenario like the 1998 Atlanta Falcons where they went 14-2 and surprised everybody. I could see that. They don't have the 49ers on the roster. They don't have the Eagles on the docket. They've already played at Kansas City and won. They've already played at Green Bay and won. We'll see. Calling your shot. I could see a 14-3 out of this team. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's move on, as we just spent some time on that game. The first game, well, I would say the next game up, is the Falcons and Jaguars. Both teams coming off of losses. Both teams have playoff aspirations. I think Jacksonville is going to be much more desperate in this game. But the 2 losses should have everybody nice and focused. If both teams play like they're playing right now, Atlanta wins this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars are not playing very well. Mm-hmm. They're better than this. Can they step up in their home away from home in London? I think this one's in Wembley, not Spurs Stadium. And win this game.
Yeah, the Jags can win this game. I mean, they have the much, much better quarterback out there. And there's a few things in this last game that were very fluky. I mean, Calvin Ridley messes up and drops Buffalo's a easy touchdown. The special teams gaffes out there, the penalties. I mean, they left a lot of points and opportunities on the board. And while the Texans are playing much better than we thought early on, they're still a pretty good overall. The Jags are still a good overall team. So I expect them to come out and play a much better game than we saw last week. They're not going to give away the game, probably, like we saw. I mean, this is a overall a well-coached team. You don't see that typically back-to-back weeks.
So, Clarence, appreciate you being here. You're on Atlanta Falcons fans. Support your team. We don't care. But, nobody's here to trash talk. Especially going into an Atlanta Falcons chat, there's not any trash talk going on. And, reminds me of, I was talking with one of my good friends yesterday. We both hate the Cubs for the same reason. Oh, the lovable Cubs. We came down and watched the Cubs made the playoffs for the first time in like 672 years. And they came down and won a game in Atlanta. And my God, they acted like the most obnoxious New York Mets / Yankees fans you would ever see. It's like, guys, you're the Cubs. You're the Cubs. Act like you at least thinking about like you'd want to come back. So, yes,
Scott,
we're very impressed with the Detroit Lions. But hey, be a hospitable guest, be a hospitable host. That's what we try and be here.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That said, Lions have been terrible forever. Just, take it back. We're not here to, talk trash, but enjoy your moment. Hopefully the Thursday night game is not your moment, though. Yeah, so
14-3, 15 and it's possible. This is a hell of a team.
And Scott, I don't know if I've ever agreed with you more. Absolutely hate the Cubs. So we can move forward. Growing up in the Midwest as a St. Louis Cardinals fan, God, I hate the Cubs. I think I'm going to stick with my guns on this one. We picked the Jags to win that early in the season. I think this is not going to be the worst thing in the world for the Falcons, but I think the Jags are going to come away with a win in a very close game. And we're going to have even more questions about is Desmond Ridder the guy or not going forward. And maybe even some groundswell for Heineke. I don't know. Ridder is playing pretty robotic, and I don't know if it gets better in this weird situation going over in London.
You watch other quarterbacks get rid of the ball when they're under pressure, and you see where the biggest problem that Desmond Ridder's having right now. It's like pressure, sack, pressure, bad throw, pressure. You put pressure on this guy and it's over. That's a bad combination. Almost as bad as giving a guy time who can't make a throw like Zach Wilson. That's even worse. Next worse is not being able to do anything under pressure. Getting fast and getting out in rollouts and operating, with in rhythm, every perfect quarterback in the NFL should be able to do that at this level. Another interesting game for me, Nick. Ravens-Browns, 2-1. Upset loss in overtime. The Ravens at home, now going on the road to Cleveland, place they've had a lot of success. And 2-1. What do you think about this game? ESPN Gamecast says 53% chance to the Ravens. However, the money says the Browns are a 3-point favorite.
The Browns defense is playing unbelievable so far this season, and probably the move of the offseason so far as coaching goes, is Stefanski bringing in Jim Schwartz, who is doing unbelievable things for that Browns defense. While Micah Parsons gets a lot of hype and credit because Cowboys, and he is that good, Myles Garrett has been the best defensive player in football so far this season. I mean, they're utilizing him, and we've seen it from some teams, but the Browns have really started to do it where he is being used as a pass rush weapon in different situations, and Schwartz has been doing an awesome job of isolating him over the center, where he can, pick an A gap, pick a B gap. And when you have, you win on first and second downs, you can unlock those opportunities. You can do that. And they're isolating, Myles Garrett against a center. And that's a matchup that Garrett's going to win most of the time in one-on-one situations. So God help the centers. I know Tyler Linderbaum is dinged up as well for the Ravens, so that could be an interesting matchup. But I think the Browns defense is the most dominant defense in football. I mean, stats say that as well so far.
They've been statement.
I mean, the stats, they've been unbelievable, Scott.
Get that dog pound. I love it.
Yeah, they've been good. So I think I might go with the Browns in this one. I also think it's a weird thing. I'm still watching the offense, but it's pretty obvious to me that Nick Chubb is better with a under center rushing game, but Deshaun Watson's better
we're not talking Nick Chubb anymore, though.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It was a weird kind of marriage that they were trying to make on offense. Now that Nick Chubb is out, I think they're going to embrace the shotgun stuff, and Watson just is much more comfortable in that. He looks night and day difference under center versus shotgun. So I think I'm going to take the Browns in this one. Ravens are a good team still, but that Browns defense is unbelievable, and I don't know if there's a single player in the NFL that is more singularly dominant than what Myles Garrett has been through 3 weeks.
You might have convinced me because normally it's hard for me. Again, I was born in Cleveland, a suburb called Akron, which is real close to Cleveland. I was born in Akron, moved down to Georgia when I was 5. So a lot of family, always followed the Browns. So as a Cleveland-born Atlanta sports fan, it's hard to find anybody more cynical than this guy. That's a lot of pain. That's a lot of pain through the years. So it's hard for me to ever pick the Browns against anybody, let alone the Ravens or the Steelers, who have been their tormentors forever. But I think you may have convinced me on this one. Coming in, I want to say the Ravens. I've got a bias towards the Ravens and Steelers because they just win. They just always seem to win, but it can't go that way. Last week we said Steelers Raiders. What's the difference? Come on, Tomlin against McDaniels. That's all I need to know. I'll take the Steelers in this one. Oh, Scott, half their lines out. I don't care. The Steelers win. That's what they do.
Yeah,
but
I mean they've been unbelievable. They have far and away the number 1 pass defense in the NFL so far, and I think they have the number 2 rush defense. I mean, they've just been
the Browns.
The Browns, yes. Yeah. Typically, you kind of give up one area for the other, and they've just been getting after it. So this is a really good team.
You may have talked me into this one. It's hard for me to pick the Browns in anything. I mean, I've lived through it. So, but you may have talked me into this one. NFC South matchup actually has a chance to go 3-1. The surprising Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints coming off of an embarrassing loss to the Green Bay Packers, who are solid, but they're not one of the NFC's elite. They're one of those, we're going to hang around 500 and try and eke into the playoff teams that they blew that lead to. But again, part of that was with, losing your quarterback out there. And I don't think anybody would have had this Buccaneers fans 3-1 after 4 games.
No, Derek Carr is going to be out, right? He's not participated in anything so far these weeks because of it.
I'm pretty sure you're right on that. I'll double check. But why can the Bucs move against the Saints' really good defense?
Because they still have playmakers out there, and I think their offensive line has been better than we'd anticipated. They might have the best right tackle in football in Tristan Wirfs, and overall, at Baker Mayfield, he's another one that he's hunting. He's going to make some mistakes out there, but he's showing why he's a competent NFL quarterback. We see the flashes of that. I think he can be fine. He's nobody that he's going to be a journeyman type that's going to get starts throughout the league. He'll probably end up with 7 teams where he started games when it's all said and done.
He's greedy. He's greedy. He's never been in a situation, I think, like a Josh Allen, where your team is better than everybody else's every time you play. Except when he was in college. That doesn't count.
Oh, yeah, that was
in the NFL, where we're gonna walk out there and I just have to not lose the game. So I understand it a little bit more from Baker Mayfield than Josh Allen with the reckless play to a certain extent. But the winner of this one's going to come out 3-1. ESPN Gamecast says Saints 55%, and they've got a 3.5-point favorites. And this one's in New Orleans. I like the Saints to bounce back against this one, Nick. I like the Saints here.
I think it's very much a coin flip game if it is Jameis Winston out there, because he can make some I mean, we've seen it, right? What was the year he had, like 20 interceptions or 30 interceptions or something?
Almost 40.
I mean, that's
he threw for like 35 and 35 or something. Yeah. I mean, insane.
Yeah. So that's if it's Jameis Winston out there, crazy things can happen. The best unit on the field, though, will be that Saints defense, even though they kind of, fell apart late last week against the Packers. They're still really good. I mean, they might have the best cornerback duo in football. So this is a coin flip one. I would stay away from it. I don't have a good feel on it either way. If it was Derek Carr, I'd feel, Saints right at home. But this is one that could go either way. I guess I'll go with the Saints just because it is Saints at home. But I don't trust it. And also another guy talking about playing really underrated. Buccaneers used a first-round pick on Kalijah Kancey. He's not been great in what I've watched, but Vita Vea, my God, man, what a monster he is out there. He is getting after the passer. He's eating up blocks. He's playing great football right now. So shout out to the big guy, Vita Vea.
Chris Walker, I believe, came in and asked earlier about the Chargers. I think it was Chris. Someone did. We get to that one. Yeah, it was Chris. So do the Chargers bounce back, or is it starting to turn into a dumpster fire? They're that game, the Chargers are playing Who are they playing this week? Why can't I find that? Raiders. Oh, good Lord. Speaking of dumpster fires.
Yeah.
Raiders at Chargers. I think the Raiders bounce back this week, and they got a dub. So 2-2,
think the Raiders
all of a sudden
bounce back?
things are starting to look better.
You think the Chargers bounce back?
I think the Chargers bounce back and beat the Raiders.
Okay. You said Raiders. So
yeah. No, I don't. I'm not picking Josh McDaniel against anybody other than like the Chicago Bears or Denver Broncos right now.
Yeah,
I know.
Sorry.
He's won 3 in a row against them. Come on.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw what's going on with Chandler Jones too. Just chaos out there, alleging that Josh McDaniels had Aaron Hernandez, killed, I guess, on Twitter, live Twitter, whatever it is. Chaos out there for the Raiders. But Chargers are kind of a dumpster fire, and with Brandon Staley's probably got the highest odds to be the first coach fired. That defense has been not good enough for a defensive-minded coach, and Justin Herbert is simply too good to be a team that's 1-2 right now with questions. I mean, he is playing as well as anybody at quarterback right now. I mean, he's dissecting it. I think I saw last week the Vikings blitzed the highest rate ever, like an NFL game. It was like 80%. And he only took like one sack or one hit out there. So just out there dicing it up. Mike Williams is out for the year though now. So we'll see what that looks like. This is Quentin Johnson time, Johnson time for them. But it's a little bit of a dumpster fire out there in terms of the competency of that team. But I mean, they got Justin Herbert. They're going to have a chance in any game.
Yeah, and again, and 2-2 all of a sudden starts looking a lot better. We're even after 4, the first quarter of the season. We're feeling pretty good about things. Just a couple more games I want to get into real quick. Commanders and the Eagles. The Commanders started 2-0. I said I was not a believer, and they got waxed pretty good by Buffalo. Kind of expect the same thing with the Eagles. Again, I'm pleased for Commanders fans because they've got some ownership and now they have a chance to get out of the muck that they've been stuck in for the last how long has it been? 20 years. Time flies, man.
They had some good years with Mike Shanahan out there, and they had the staff.
I grew up with Joe Gibbs, man. They won three Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. That was the Washington team I grew up with, but it's been maybe a flash of a season here and there under Snyder. But I don't expect them. I expect them to get beat by double digits again in Philly.
Yeah, Philly's a 9.5-point favorite. Eagles should lean on them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Eagles offensive line versus Washington's defensive line will be a heck of a matchup. That'll be a lot of fun. But the Eagles at home, I think they're going to take care of business and win this game. Maybe it won't be the full 10 points, Scott, because that Commanders defense is pretty damn good. But it's really going to come down to just how many mistakes does Sam Howell make, right? It could be one where if he throws 3 picks, they're getting beat by 20. If he, has some good luck on those turnover-worthy plays, then maybe the Eagles only win by, 7. But I would expect the Eagles to win.
Nick, you're much more of a scheme guy than I am. I'm a personnel guy, so I would be general manager and I'd hire you as my coaches. And Ryan asked a question. He says, do you think every defense that's just aligned, et cetera, are trying to do exactly what the Cowboys do? And it is a copycat league. If this works, let's try and do it. We see a lot of, the 3-5 didn't exist, was rare 15 years ago. Everything was 4-3, 4-3, 4-3, and then nickel. But things have changed. Now a three-man interior line is basically the norm. So, what exactly are the Cowboys doing other than, moving Micah Parsons around and let him go and get the quarterback and then being aggressive with their corners. Match quarters, all this stuff, schemes. I'm like Deion Sanders the other day saying, man, you're getting too technical. What are you trying to say?
I mean, I don't think teams can do exactly what the Cowboys are doing because it is, you can run schemes till the cows come home, but it is about players at the end of the day and guys getting after the quarterback. And I guess you are kind of seeing what teams are matching what the Cowboys are doing in just terms of doing everything you can to isolate your best pass rusher in a opportune matchup. And it's not just, static. We have a right defensive end and he's going to rush the same spot every play. No, we're going to move him around. He's going to be 2-point stance over a center from time to time. We're going to have him drop back every once in a while too, because you're going to totally collapse the pocket to where he's at. And he drops back. Well, now what do we do? Only a few times a game. You still want your best pass rusher to get after it. But I think as far as what the Cowboys have done to try to maximize and isolate and play matchup with the pass rush, other teams are going to start doing that when you have that guy. I think the Raiders have tried doing that as well with Max Crosby, and Max Crosby is a great pass rusher, but it's not the same out there. You need like a special kind of guy out there. Myles Garrett fits that. Micah Parsons fit that. Like a true alien out there. So teams can try to mimic it, but you got to have the guys to do that.
Those guys are harder to find than quarterbacks these days.
True freaks.
It's harder to find a guy who's 250 pounds with a sub-4 shuttle, than it is finding a guy with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball these days. Mm-hmm. 2 more games I want to get to, then we're going to get out of here. Nick, we are guaranteed to have 2 winless teams at the end of at the end of this week, because I think there's only 4. There might be more, but I know that 4 are playing each other.
Yeah,
one of those teams is one that you picked out right away at the beginning of the year for setup for a big fallback based on historical norms and averages, was Minnesota Vikings. They're going down in the Panthers, who will fight you. The Vikings are better than the Panthers right now, aren't they?
They're the best undefeated, our best winless team. I expect them to regress some positively. It's crazy. They have like the number 1. Kirk Cousins is on pace for 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns and 11 interceptions this year. And Justin Jefferson's leading the NFL in receiving yards, and they're 0-3. The offensive line and the defense have not been good enough. Danielle Hunter's been pretty good, though. 5 sacks.
Got 5 sacks.
5
That's
sacks.
More than some teams.
Yeah, he's been very good, but I expect the Vikings to win this one pretty handily. It's a team that's probably their playoff hopes have slipped through, starting at 0-3 with how the Lions look, especially. But the Vikings are a team that I would expect, based on what we've seen and based on the talent, the most likely to positively regress or progress, whatever you want to say, get to the mean.
Knowing that the Vikings are playing the Panthers and the Bears are playing the Broncos, it feels like a semifinal playoff for the Caleb Williams Bowl. Mm-hmm. I like Minnesota in this one. If they don't win this one, my goodness, they're worse than we really thought. Not just unlucky. Last year they had some good fortune to win all those games. This year they're not just unlucky. They've lost the plot. Speaking of lost the plot, a couple of teams, the Denver Broncos and Chicago Bears. This one, 2 dysfunctional teams right now. Not just playing poorly. Right now they're dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. And the Broncos are going to Chicago after giving up 70. I still feel like, as bad as the Broncos were, I still feel like they're more at least cohesive on one side of the ball to go in and get that win against the Bears on the road.
Yeah, it's a classic game of a stoppable force meets a movable object, with the worst defense in the NFL taking on the worst offense in the NFL. But the Broncos have one of the better return games in the NFL through 3 games. Sample size, how many returns are there a game still? But the return game's better, and the Broncos offense is average to slightly above average. So I think the Broncos should go in there, win this game. I think they are embarrassed after last week's game, and I think that as long as they play disciplined football in their rush lanes, then they should be able to slow down this Bears offense enough where the Broncos offense can take care of business.
Yeah, if they don't tackle any better than they did against the Miami Dolphins, Justin Fields is going to run for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. That might be enough to win the game. You want to go back to the cliches, running game, stop the run, turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, this one comes down to basically who still wants to play football this year. Because I'm not sure the Bears do. I feel like they've already kind of mailed it in on this coaching staff right now. And I'm not sure that the Bears really want to play for this guy anymore. And the Broncos, on the other hand, the defense quit last week, but that may have been a TKO. They got knocked out, standing 8. Dude, just throw in the towel already.
Yeah. Throw in the damn towel.
Throw in the towel. Yeah, I think the Broncos will show up and play, and they're a better team right now, which isn't saying much. We're talking about the 2 worst teams in football right now, statistically and stylistically and the eye test. I think the Broncos have to win this one, man.
They will win. And what does that 0-4 mean for the Denver Broncos? It probably means Vance Joseph's out, and I would expect some players benched / outright released. And the one that really comes to mind for me for that would be Randy Gregory. getting blocked out in a crackback block 3 plays in a row where you're just pinning your ears back and rushing upfield, and it's the same exact formation, the same direction. It's like, my God, dude, like, you got to know what's coming, and you cannot get. I think it was River Craycraft out there, little small, not diminutive, but not a physically imposing wide receiver, and he's
Orange
out there.
County kid from a private school in Southern California.
Yeah, you cannot do that out there. The thing that pisses me off, sorry to cuss on here, but about it though, is that it's not like, when Nick Bonito sometimes gets blocked out, it's like, okay, your body size is your body size. Randy Gregory is a massive guy. When he's getting blocked out like that, it comes down to, between the ears and what's in the rib cage there, the heart there. So yeah, where's your heart? Where's your mind? So if the Broncos lose this one, I expect some heads to roll, and we can firmly start talking. What does a Caleb Williams team look like here? What does a top 3 draft pick look like? Right. What do you have to do to potentially trade Wilson? What does the rebuild look like? But 0-4, I mean, it is time to, I hear taps playing in the background, and you better accelerate that too. Because let me tell you, Scott, the difference between having a number 3 pick this year, top 2 pick, versus a 6 overall pick is massive in terms of what you can do for a franchise. And I'm not saying tank outright, but maybe tear down a little bit so you don't have to tank.
On the flip side of that, what's it mean for the Chicago Bears?
If they're 0-4?
Yeah, if they're 0-4, they're not passing up. They're not passing up Caleb Williams or Drake May. I wouldn't think they would. They would say, okay, we're not, because they have it after this offseason. They have to decide on the 5th-year option for Justin Fields, which they may pass on. This is his 3rd year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you do it between years 3 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. I get
right.
some of the technicalities confused,
but
right. you take the 5th-year option before the 4th year. So you're punting on that, trying to deal him. You're in another rebuild mode, so to speak. So this is for those of us who enjoy the draft, who enjoy team building, who enjoy free agency, this is a big game. Mm-hmm. It really is. It could be extremely entertaining again, they're going to have to tear it down and build it back up. I don't think the Bears are there. I think they've got some of their pieces in place, but it means a lot for the future of Justin Fields. This season does. I think with the Broncos, you're looking at 6 or 7 guys that are your 7 highest paid players. They're all gone next year. You're making moves. Half of them could be gone by Halloween.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see for the Bears. I mean, this is a good enough quarterback class that, like, regardless of having a top 2 pick, you could potentially see that happening. I mean, maybe also the Bears are a team that, let's say, I just closed Tankathon, of course, but a team that quarterback gets hurt or something, or let's say the Bengals just suck this year and they end up with the 2nd pick, probably won't happen. But, maybe the Bears offer, their pick and that Carolina pick that's going to be really high, or Carolina, with Bryce Young, who they love. Maybe they like him more than Drake May, and they trade out of that. I guess they don't have the pick. The Bears got the pick, but then
I forgot the Bears had Carolina's pick.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So we're talking Arizona and Chicago. Holy cow. It's going to be fun. See, I love this stuff. You can talk about, I love the team building aspect of this thing. And I'd be thrilled. Arizona right now, I'd be scoured. I grew up in the 80s in Atlanta. Okay. The Falcons had 1 winning season in the 80s. It was 1980. I was 7 years old. So between ages 7 and 17, I didn't see a winning season. I became a fan of the draft and team building, and it helped shape my career. Here I am. So, the Bears and Arizona Cardinals are in pretty good spots for next season. The Broncos are not. They got to win.
Yeah, but things can turn around if you commit to it and hit your picks, just like we've seen with the Lions here. So, yeah, going to be interesting. Jordan Brown, oh man, I didn't get a notification. I was looking forward to this. Well, you can listen to it after the fact. That would mean that you're not part of the chat. But the good thing about these shows, Scott and I are consistent with what times we are on. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're live at 6 a.m. early, 6 a.m. Pacific time. So if you do the math there, whatever time zone you're in, but that's when we're live. Typically it's maybe 602, 603 because I
Yeah,
have to get
and
some
Jordan, leave some comments in. I'll go back and check. We're the channels that we've been podcasting on, et cetera, have grown a lot. So I go back in and check a lot of them. So, and I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all y'all that have come in and followed and supported everything that we've done. It means a lot to us. And, and Chris says on these channels, on the Falcons channels, it's 9 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I usually schedule it for 9:05, but that's close enough. So we'll be back. On that note, we are going to get out of here. We are right at 1 hour exactly. Some really fun games. Last night was it ended up being a pretty dominating game, but for me, that was intriguing. I enjoyed watching Detroit. No offense to Packers fans, but when we're talking about separation, who's going to win this, who's got a chance at this, Detroit took a step up.
Yeah, they did.
That was entertaining for me. That was intriguing to me. Now we went over a bunch of the games, a Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins game, heavyweight fight. Who's really there? Hell, the 0-3 teams. There's going to be 2 0-4 teams at the end of the week, and there's going to be a lot of questions asked. The NFC South, there's going to be a 3-1 team guaranteed coming out of this one. There could be 2 of them. Do the Jacksonville Jaguars get back on track? Check out the AFC North with a couple of clashes in there. So it's going to be a fun weekend. We'll be back on Monday on these channels to talk about it. We'll hit the Falcons and Jaguars first, and then if anybody wants to talk some more football, we will. And then we'll talk Broncos on Mile High Huddle. So follow us so you can see us everywhere we want to be. And on that note, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate everybody being here. And Nick, do you have any final thoughts?
No real final thoughts. Going to be interesting to follow this week. Excited to see what happens with that Bills-Dolphins game. And the Lions look for real. It's going to be fun to follow them this year. I do want to ask you right now, don't want to use the phrase gun to your head, but if I pressed you on it, the winner of the NFC will be who?
Eagles.
Okay. I'm probably gonna go 49ers.
I'm gonna stick with the Eagles.
Okay.
I just think they have a little more depth. I like their playmakers. I like Jalen Hurts a little bit better than Purdy right now. Purdy, which is just for me, it's just gonna have to prove it. It's one of those. I'm almost always gonna go if I feel pretty even. I'm gonna go with who's done it before and the home team on that one. So it could come down to that, but it wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams got knocked off on the way to the NFC Championship game by the Detroit Lions. I think those 3 teams are ahead of. We talked about the Detroit Lions being in a tier below those other 2 teams. Well, I think there's now a separate tier. It may be 49ers and Eagles, and then right behind the Detroit, and then everybody else. I think there's 3 teams in the NFC right now.
Yeah. Pretty awesome to see the Lions in that discussion as well. So, and you can answer these questions about the
yeah, Winston. So what's the name of the YouTube channel? It's just youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. That one's the easy one. No play on words. My social media handles are Scout Kennedy, but the YouTube one is just youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. We're pushing 4,000 strong on that, thanks to people like you. So thank you so much. We are there a lot. Dom says, I like the background. Me too. That's actually a digital representation of the draft in Kansas City. So I don't own the rights to this. If somebody has any playing, hit me up. I'll change it. But I think people like us promoting the NFL draft as well. So on that note, we're going to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to a weekend of football, college football, NFL. We will see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, same channels. Thanks, y'all. Have a great week.